come to the stage Mr. Ambassador Enrico Nunziata and Mrs. Stefania Capello, Mr. Tor A. Torhang to come to the stage, Professor Muhammad Azam and Professor Rafiqul Muni Chaudhary to accompany me to the stage. Thank you. So I will ask His Excellency Mr. Ambassador Enrico Nunziata to say a few words to start with.
Buongiorno, Shubho Shokal. Good morning again to everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for participating in this program, the Week of the Italian Language, la settimana della lingua italiana. First of all, let me thank the director of the Institute of Modern Languages of Dhaka University, Professor Shishir Bhattacharya, and all other academicians that have accepted to be part of this program, Professor Azam and Professor Chaudhuri, and in particular I would like to also to thank Mrs. Stefania Capello and Mr. Tor A. Torau that are supporting me in this program. They will then make a presentation from their side. I hope that you will find interesting on the studying Italian language as a tool, as we discussed before. What is the Week of the Italian Language? The Week of the Italian Language in the world is an event that is promoted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation and is implemented abroad by the diplomatic network, Italian cultural institutes, embassies and consulates during this specific week. Yearly, on the third week of October, we organize the Week of the Italian Language. That is, let's say, a vast program that can include seminars, workshops, film screening, and others, debates on the Italian language. And let's say, the objective is to promote the diffusion of the Italian language. This is now the 19th edition, and it's the first time that we organize the Week of the Italian Language in Dhaka. The theme of this year, because every year there is a specific theme for the Week of the Italian Language, this year is the Italian language on stage. So the Italian spoken at the theater, or the Italian of drama, novels that have been adapted for the theater. So in the intervention of Mrs. Stefania Capello, there will be some reference to the specific theme of this year. The program of today, of this edition in Dhaka that we have conceived with the director of the Institute of Modern Languages, include several activities. At the outside of this auditorium, you can find a book exhibition. Actually, is an excursus in the Italian history and Italian literature and in Italian art. So I hope that you will find interesting in consulting these books. In particular, our focus will be also on Leonardo da Vinci, this universal genius. It is the anniversary this year of his 500 years from his death, and there will be a screening for all students that have not yet seen it of a documentary film. And then Italy is also very much associated to the cooking, so there will be another documentary film related to the food in the cinema. So I think that this is very nice and very playful in a way, a documentary film, and I hope that you will enjoy. As you can see there, This is the portal, this is the website, let's say, of the Italian language. So you can find a lot of information on this website concerning, let's say, how and where studying Italian. Then if there are opportunities for scholarships, for instance, which universities have courses of Italian language for foreigners, how to get certifications of the knowledge of Italian, the level of knowledge of the Italian language, and then of course some also statistics. I would like also to mention a very interesting tool to learn Italian, that is an app that you can download, and is Italiamo, and is a cartoon, let's say, a very fascinating way to learn Italian, because there are two characters. One is Leonardo da Vinci and Mona Lisa. So Leo and Lisa will bring you in a tour in Italy, discovering, let's say, the beauty of our country and tradition and the history of our country, and learning Italian during this journey, imaginary journey. So with this, I would like to stop now by inviting, of course, for the break, also to a taste of Italian cuisine, that we cannot miss it, And I would like also to now to give back the floor to again to the director to introduce the next speakers. Thank you very much for the attention. Thank you very much for being here.
Now we'll hear from Professor Mohammad Azam, who is Associate Professor of Department of Bengali of the University of Dhaka.
প্রিয় ছাত্রছাত্রীরা, my colleagues and honorable guests, আমরা এখানে এসেছি ইতালীয় ভাষা সপ্তাহ উদযাপনের জন্য, ভাষা দিবস উদযাপনের জন্য। So we should concentrate on for what reason we will go to learn Italian language at all. আমাদের অ্যাম্বাসেডর মহোদয় সেই বিষয়ে এখানে একটা আলোকপাত করেছেন যে এটার ইতালির নানান ধরনের আকর্ষণ আছে, সিনেমা আছে, চিত্রকলা আছে। আমি ইতালি সম্পর্কে কোনো বিশেষজ্ঞ নই এবং সেই সম্পর্কে কোনো আলাপ করব না, কিন্তু আমি এখানে যারা ছাত্রছাত্রীরা আছে, যারা ইতালীয় ভাষা এবং সংস্কৃতি সম্পর্কে বিশেষভাবে আগ্রহী হয়ে উঠতে পারে বা আগ্রহের প্রয়োজন আছে, তাদের জন্য শুধু এটা বলবো, যেটা বলবো সেটাতে এইভাবে বলা যায়, ইতালি একটা ইউরোপীয় দেশ, অনেক দূরের, আমরা অনেকে সেখানে যাইনি এবং হয়তো যাওয়ার পরিকল্পনাও করি নাই, কিন্তু এখানে আমরা যখন বড় হয়েছি তখন ইতালি আমাদের কাছে আসলে সবসময় হাজির ছিল। কি কারণে এবং কিভাবে হাজির ছিল এবং তার গুরুত্বটা কি, সেই সম্পর্কে আমি কিছু কথা বলবো। সো মাই title may be something like this: The Contribution of Italy, European South, the contribution to the world civilization of Italy, the European South, as we perceived it as from Bangladesh, the global South. We are global. We are from global South, and Italy is European South, first world. We perceived Italy in this way. এরকম একটা বক্তৃতা কিছু অংশ আমি হয়তো বলবো। আমরা বরাবরই মডার্নাইজেশন ব্যাপারটার সঙ্গে পরিচিত, এবং মডার্নাইজেশন আমাদের আসলে একটা লক্ষ্য যে আমরা মডার্ন হতে চাই, আমরা মডার্নিটিতে পৌঁছতে চাই। বিং কলোনাইজড জোন, modernity here for us is always basically westernization. We have learned modernity from England, from Europe. So we perceived modernity and civilization from here in Bangladesh, being a colonized zone of the world, as the modernity of Europe basically, and the very tales told by the European about their modernity, about their advancement, about their progress, is always related to Italia, that means Rome and Romance. আমরা ইউরোপকে দেখেছি, আমরা ইউরোপীয় সভ্যতা কি, হোয়াট ইজ ইউরোপিয়ান সিভিলাইজেশন। যে কোনো ন্যারেটিভসে আমরা দেখব যে ইউরোপিয়ান সিভিলাইজেশন হলো গ্রেকো রোমান সিভিলাইজেশন। ইউরোপীয় সিভিলাইজেশন শুধু তার অরিজিন না, আমরা দেখব যে এটা একটা রিকনস্ট্রাকশন অফ গ্রেকো রোমান সিভিলাইজেশন। আইডিয়াটা হলো এরকম, রেটরিকটা হলো এরকম, কনস্ট্রাকশনটা হলো এরকম যে সভ্যতা গ্রিকে শুরু হয়েছিল, গ্রিক থেকে বাই বোট it traveled to Rome. You know, the man was Aeneas, এবং রোমান বিখ্যাত কবি ভার্জিল ওই যে গ্রিক থেকে ইনিয়াসের রোমে আসা নিয়ে যে কাব্য রচনা করেছিলেন ইনিদ, সেটা তো আসলে রূপকী অর্থে ওই সভ্যতার ভ্রমণকেই প্রকাশ করে, যে সভ্যতা গ্রিক থেকে রোমে আসলো। এই যে রোমান সভ্যতা, রোমান সিভিলাইজেশন, এটা আমরা জানি যে আমাদের সমস্ত পৃথিবীর যে গাল গল্প, সে গাল গল্পে খুবই একটা সেন্ট্রাল ক্যারেক্টার রোমান সিভিলাইজেশন, রোম। ফর লং সেঞ্চুরিজ ইট হ্যাড বিন দি সেন্টার অফ ওয়ার্ল্ড সিভিলাইজেশন। নিশ্চয়ই সেখানে প্রচুর সাপ্রেশন ছিল, নিশ্চয়ই সেখানে কেন্দ্রিকতা ছিল, বল প্রয়োগ ছিল, তারপরও একটা ফর সেঞ্চুরিজ একটা সিভিলাইজেশন যখন থাকে, যখন একটা বড় সাম্রাজ্য থাকে, তখন তার নানান ধরনের সুবিধাও থাকে। তার সব কিছু আমরা রোমান সাম্রাজ্যে পেয়েছি। রোমান সাম্রাজ্য থেকে কী পেয়েছি? আমরা ছোটোবেলা থেকে শুনে আসছি যে রোমান সাম্রাজ্য পৃথিবীকে ল উপহার দিয়েছে। ইট গেট অ্যাজ গেট ল, মানে একটা বড় সাম্রাজ্য পরিচালনার জন্য, যেটা একটা ছোট কমিউনিটি নয়। গ্রিকদের ছিল ছোট নগর রাষ্ট্র, ওই নগর রাষ্ট্র এক ধরনের একটা কমিউনিটি হিসাবে পরিচালিত হতো। বাট রোমান সিভিলাইজেশন, রোমান এম্পায়ার was a great big thing with new people, new population, a vast area. So এটার যথাযোগ্য ডিসিপ্লিন মেনটেনের জন্য একটা আইনি ব্যবস্থাপনার প্রয়োজন ছিল। রোমান সাম্রাজ্য আপনারা জানেন যে আর্কিটেকচারের জন্য খুবই বিখ্যাত, কলোসিয়াম নয়, এরকম বিস্তর আর্কিটেকচার এখনও রোমান সাম্রাজ্যের সেই স্মৃতি বহন করছে। রোমান সাম্রাজ্য আপনারা জানেন যে এটা তার ডেইলি ব্যবহার্য সাইন্টিফিক ইনোভেশনের জন্য খুবই বিখ্যাত, যেমন বাঁধ নির্মাণ, বড় কনস্ট্রাকশন ইত্যাদির জন্য খুব বিখ্যাত। এগুলো পৃথিবীতে তাদের কন্ট্রিবিউশন ছিল। কিন্তু জ্ঞানগতভাবে সিভিলাইজেশনের দিক থেকে, মডার্নাইজেশনের দিক থেকে আসলে, এবং সভ্যতার বিকাশের দিক থেকে রোমান সাম্রাজ্য শেষ পর্যন্ত ওই যে গ্রিকের এক্সটেনশন হিসাবে অথবা গ্রিকের সঙ্গে মিলে গ্রেকো রোমান সিভিলাইজেশন আসলে ইউরোপের এবং সেই অর্থে সমস্ত পৃথিবীর সিভিলাইজেশনের বেসটা তৈরি করেছিল। এই বেসটা তৈরি করার পেছনে আরেকটা গভীর গোপন কারণ আছে। আপনারা জানেন যেমন নিটশে, জার্মান নিটশে খুব গালিগালাজ করতো ইউরোপিয়ান সভ্যতাকে। সে বলতো যে ইটস হেলেনিক অ্যান্ড ইটস খ্রিস্টিয়ান, দিস টু আর ডিজিজেস। নিটশে মনে করতেন দুইটাই আসলে ডিজিজ। নিটশে যাই মনে করুক না কেন, আমরা জানি যে ইউরোপীয় সভ্যতা হলো হেলেনিক, ইউরোপীয় সভ্যতা হলো খ্রিস্টিয়ান। এই দুই মূল উপাদান ইউরোপীয় সভ্যতার ভিত্তি, বেস অফ ইউরোপিয়ান সিভিলাইজেশন। সো হেলেনিক, as we stated before, it traveled from Greek to Rome. And Christianity, all of you know, Jesus Christ ইস্টের লোক হলেও আসলে আমরা গত 2000 বছর ধরে যে খ্রিস্টান ধর্ম পাই, এটা আসলে একটা ওয়েস্টার্নাইজড রিকনস্ট্রাকশন বাই সেন্ট পল। ওই সেন্ট পলের ইউরোপীয় রিকনস্ট্রাকশন ইউরোপে আসলে এই হাজার হাজার বছরের জন্য এই ভিত্তিটা তৈরি করতে পেরেছিল, কারণ এটা একটা সময়ে রোমান সাম্রাজ্যের ধর্ম হিসেবে গৃহীত হয়েছিল। রোমান সাম্রাজ্যের পক্ষে উপায় ছিল না খ্রিস্টান না হয়ে, কারণ তাদের যে অনুসারী প্লেজিয়ানরা ছিল তারা খ্রিস্টান হয়ে গিয়েছিল, ফলে তারা খ্রিস্টান হতে বাধ্য হয়েছে সাম্রাজ্য রক্ষার জন্য, যেমন হয়েছিল ভারতের অশোক বৌদ্ধ হয়েছিল সাম্রাজ্য রক্ষার জন্য। কিন্তু ওই ঘটনার ফলে একটা বিরাট সাম্রাজ্যের ধর্ম হিসেবে দ্য স্ট্রেট রিলিজিয়ান অফ রোমান এম্পায়ার হওয়ার ফলে খ্রিশ্চানিটি যেই রূপে কোডেড হয়েছে, যেই রূপে কোডিফাইড হয়েছে, তার বুক ফর্ম যেভাবে লাভ করেছে, সেটাই আসলে পরবর্তী ইউরোপের ভিত্তি তৈরি করেছে। So, the baseline of European civilization and therefore the center of world civilization was from Hellenic and Christian civilization, and incidentally Rome was the center of these two constructions. From the very beginning of our life we have heard Italia for such contribution to world civilization, European civilization and therefore world civilization. ওই পুরনো রোমান সভ্যতা সারা পৃথিবীতে এখনও কি পরিমাণ প্রভাবশালী, সেটা আসলে আমরা বুঝতে পারবো যদি আমরা হলিউডের এবং ইউরোপিয়ান ক্লাসিক সিনেমাগুলোর দিকে তাকাই। আমরা দেখব যে ওই গ্রিকের এবং রোমানের, প্রধানত গ্রিক নয়, রোমানদের গাল গল্প আসলে হলিউডের সিনেমার একটা অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ এলাকা দখল করে রেখেছে। ইউরোপ আমেরিকানরা রোমকে আসলে এই পরিমাণ গুরুত্বই দেয়। ইতালিকে বা রোমকে আমরা সেকেন্ড গুরুত্বপূর্ণ সময় হিসেবে পাই আসলে 13th সেঞ্চুরি থেকে। উই অল রিড সনেট অ্যান্ড উই নো মাইকেল মধুসূদন দত্ত, দ্য বেঙ্গলি সনেট রাইটার poet, learned about sonnet from Petrarch, the great Italian poet, who initiated sonnet as a form. তো পেট্রার্ক আসলে শুধু সনেট লেখেন নাই, পেট্রার্কের সনেটের ব্যাপারটা তো আছেই। সনেটের মতো একটা অসাধারণ, সারা পৃথিবীতে অত্যন্ত প্রভাবশালী সাহিত্য ফর্ম এমন এক জনগোষ্ঠীর মধ্যেই আসলে উদ্ভূত হতে পারে, যে জনগোষ্ঠীর জীবনযাপনের মধ্যে ওই শৃঙ্খলাটা ছিল, ওই ইনোভেশনটা ছিল, বড় কবিত্বের উপাদানগুলো ছিল। কিন্তু সেটাই মুখ্য নয়, পেট্রার্কের আরেকটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বৈশিষ্ট্য আছে। পেট্রার্ক hold basically another very important feature which we regard as an important element of modernization of the world. Petrarch wrote love poems. That means poems devoted to another human being, not some devata, devi or god. It was the initiation of secular attitude all over the world. পেট্রার্কের মধ্যে, পেট্রার্কের সময়কালে এই আধুনিকতার একটা বিকাশ ঘটেছিল, আর তার অব্যবহিত পরে আপনারা জানেন আবির্ভূত হবেন দান্তে, দ্য গ্রেট ইটালিয়ান পয়েট, সবচেয়ে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ কবি, যাকে টি.এস. এলিয়ট তার সবচেয়ে প্রিয় কবি বলতেন, এবং স্কলার হোরে লুই বোরেস মনে করতেন যে দান্তে পড়ে নাই তার জীবনের 14 আনা বৃথা। সেই দান্তে আবির্ভূত হবেন যে দান্তের মধ্যে আসলে ইতালীয় সাউথ অ্যান্ড ইটালিয়ান, ইউরোপিয়ান সাউথ অ্যান্ড ইউরোপিয়ান নর্থের মধ্যে যে গোলমাল তখন চলছিল, সেই গোলমালের একটা চূড়ান্ত প্রতিফলন ঘটবে ডিভাইন কমেডিয়ার মধ্যে। এই ধরনের একটা ব্যাখ্যা করেছেন বার্টন রাসেল তার হিস্ট্রি অফ ওয়েস্টার্ন ফিলোসফি বইতে। এটা দুর্দান্ত। আপনারা জানেন যে ওই যে ইউরোপে উত্তরের বিকাশ, জাতীয়তাবাদের বিকাশ নর্থে, এবং নতুন যে শিল্প পুঁজির বিকাশ, সেই বিকাশে সাউথ, যেহেতু সাউথ ইটালি আপনারা জানেন ভ্যাটিকান সিটি এবং সেই অর্থে ক্যাথলিক খ্রিশ্চানিটির সেন্টার, তার সঙ্গে উত্তরের এই দ্বন্দ্বটা হয়েছিল। সেই দ্বন্দ্বেও ইতালি স্বভাবতই একটা অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ভূমিকা পালন করেছে, এবং সেই ভূমিকার কারণেই এখানে দান্তের মতো বড় কবি, যে ইউরোপীয় ওই শতাব্দীগুলোর মূল ভাবকে ধারণ করে ডিভাইন কমেডিয়া লিখেছে, সেরকম কবি জন্মেছে। ইতালি পৃথিবীর যে পুঁজিবাদের বিকাশ, সেই বিকাশের প্রধান সেন্টারগুলোর মধ্যে পড়ে না। কিন্তু ওই সময়টাতে যখন ইতালির অর্থনৈতিক অবস্থা অপেক্ষাকৃত খারাপ, তখন ইতালি এমন এক ঘটনার জন্ম দিয়েছিল যেটা আমরা ছোটোবেলা থেকেই পড়ে পড়ে ইতালির ব্যাপারে অত্যন্ত ফ্যাসিনেটেড হয়েছে। ইট ওয়াজ রেনেসা। ইউ নো, ইতালি ওয়াজ দ্য হাব অফ রেনেসা, অ্যান্ড ফর 200 years Italy produced so many great men like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and many others, You know, Vasari, the great Italian historian, enlisted minimum 1,000 great men in his historiography who was born in Italy during these 200 years. So Renaissance, যাকে আমরা ওয়ার্ল্ড মডার্নাইজেশনের খুব সেন্টার ধরি, ওটার সেন্টার ছিল ইতালিয়া, এবং ওই সময়কার যে আর্ট, ওই সময়ের যে আর্কিটেকচার, ওই সময়ের যে পেইন্টিংস অ্যান্ড স্কাল্পচার, সেটা তো আজ পর্যন্ত পৃথিবীতে অতুলনীয়। ইতালি আমরা দেখবো যে এরপরে এই ওয়ার্ল্ড সেন্টার থেকে খানিকটা বিচ্যুত হয়েছে, যদিও চরম বিচ্যুতি যে ঘটে নাই তার প্রমাণ আমরা দেখবো যে ইতালিয়া একটা ইউনিফাইড রাষ্ট্র হিসেবে বহুদিন ধরে ছিল না, কিন্তু যেহেতু এটা ভূমধ্যসাগরীয় অঞ্চল, মেডিটেরিয়ান সি এবং তার সন্নিহিত যে ওয়াটার বডিজ এগুলো তৈরি করেছে ইতালিয়ার ভূ অঞ্চল, ফলে এটা সবসময় বাণিজ্যের জন্য খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ছিল, এবং ওই বাণিজ্যের কারণে এটা ওপেননেস ছিল। এবং আমরা দেখব ইউরোপের অন্য সমস্ত জাতির লোকেরা এখানে তারা আসতো আসলে একটা উন্মুক্ত অপেক্ষাকৃত অ্যাডভান্সড অঞ্চলে জীবনযাপনের জন্য। আমরা ইউরোপ, ইংল্যান্ডের এবং জার্মানের এবং ফ্রান্সের এমন কবি লেখকদের খুব কমকে চিনি 19 এবং 18 সেঞ্চুরির, যারা জীবনের একটা লম্বা সময় ধরে আসলে ইতালিতে ছিল না, কারণ ইতালির ওই ওপেননেসটা ছিল, যদিও তারা পিছিয়ে পড়েছিল ইউনিফিকেশনের অভাবে। অ্যান্ড মিড 19th সেঞ্চুরিতে the unification process began, and we know the nationalist movement of Italia, the unification movement of Italia happened at the middle of 19th century, and it produced Mazzini, Garibaldi and many other leaders who influenced a lot the nationalist movement of India, and say we have these names in Tagore's short story, say we wanted to be Mazzini, Garibaldi once upon a time. সো ওই যে ইউনিফিকেশনের যে ব্যাপারটা, সেটা আমাদের এখানে এসছে মাৎসিনি গ্যারিবাল্ডি হয়ে, ন্যাশনালিস্ট মুভমেন্টের লিডার হয়ে। সবসময় আমাদের এখানে ইতালি আসলে হাজিরই ছিল, এবং ইতালি যেহেতু তার ভিত্তিটা পাকা ছিল, ফলে সে দ্রুত আসলে উন্নতি করেছে। অ্যান্ড নাও এ ডেজ ইতালি, ইউ নো, যে গ্রেট পাওয়ার অফ দ্য ওয়ার্ল্ড। সো ইতালি হলো এমন একটা দেশ যেটার অতীত ছিল, ইটস রিচ পাস্ট অ্যান্ড রিচ প্রেজেন্ট। ইটস ভেরি রেয়ার কম্বিনেশন. Very rare combination. It's with great past and great present. In the 20th century, Italy also contributed the whole world with its cinema. You know, great cinema makers it produced, and cinema movement, realistic movement happened in Italy. In literature and other artistic works, Italy led a very familiar movement, futuristic movement in 1910. So in literature and in cinema, and as the ambassador stated, in cuisine, Italy is very familiar all over the world. In Bangladesh, we know Italian food like pizza and pasta is very popular nowadays. So, what can we want from Italy, from Bangladesh, the global south? We want Italy that it will always remain in the side of peace. It will help Bangladesh while necessity arises. And I have already stated that there are many reasons for which we can learn Italian. We can be familiar to Italy. Long live Italy. Thank you all.
ধন্যবাদ। আমি পুরোপুরি বক্তব্য রাখবো না, আমি মাঝে মাঝে একটা কথা বলবো। একটা হচ্ছে যে সুভাষ বসু, আপনারা জানেন, মিস্টার বোস went to Germany, joined Hitler, and then he was trying to make India independent. Before leaving, there was a meeting in the house, and Nirsi Chaudhuri wrote in his book that he was talking about Garibaldi, that what Garibaldi is doing, is there any leader in Bengal who can do the same thing? So after a month, Mr. Bose fled from Calcutta and joined Hitler, and Nirsi Chaudhuri claims that because I talked about Garibaldi to him, he had the inspiration to go to Germany. So this is one thing. Another thing is that the influence of Italian poets on Michael Madhusudan Dotto. That's Ajam already talked about that. And in cinema, Bicycle Thieves, you know, a very well-known film, had an impact on Bengali cinematographers and made people like Satyajit Ray or Minal Sen. Okay. Another thing is that we are all Romans, wherever we are, in China, in Bangladesh, or in India, or in Paris, we are continuing to be Roman, maybe not Italian. In our thinking, in our politics, in everything is Roman here, in fact. Our hairstyle, our clean-shaved face, this is all Roman. Greeks, you know, had all bearded people, like Rabindranath Tagore, but Romans, they are clean-shaved. So we are all clean-shaved and we are all Roman. I don't know. So now I will ask Mrs. Stefania Chiapello, although this is written with CH, to say a few words to us. And Stefania is a teacher of Italian, so I think we'll know something from her.
Good morning, and thank you very much for being here, listening to me. That was possible thanks to my ambassador, Enrico Nunziata, and to the director of Institute of Modern Languages, Dr. Bhattacharya. I want to relate to the movie. I don't know how many of you were able to be here before, to talk about crossing boundaries. Leonardo and Botticelli had two different backgrounds, but in the end they were painters, both of them. They were focusing on different things, and so we had two different results, basically two geniuses anyway. I don't want to give a lecture today. I just want to share my experience. I am a university lecturer. I am a linguist first. That is my academic background. That it went on with business studies for the master degree, and then again back to linguistics for the PhD. I started then my working experience in the academic environment after 15 years being in the business. I started that not in my country. I started that in Spain in 2003. And basically the focus was on future interpreters and translators, but also to other students coming from different backgrounds. Then I could see future engineers, future lawyers, future psychologists, future politics students, and that was because they had different needs, and Italy, the language and the knowledge was in many cases an inspiration. That's why knowing the language, it could make a difference. Then you can be a specialist in literature. Then my colleague Thor will talk extensively about this. But literature is not only for specialists. Through literature, as my other colleague mentioned before, is also for understanding a culture. And even if you want to work as an engineer in a country, perhaps you need to know the background if you want to be successful and to communicate exactly what you mean. Because in the end, the goal is to make the others understand. So that's why I wanted to share this experience, because as a teacher of Italian as a foreign language, I need to reinvent every time any academic course how to propose the subject, because I need to see who is the student in front. Some of the students are more curious, some others are less. Also because in some cultures is very, they are quite used to separate the fields. And I like to think all this as a whole. And then we have a better understanding that it was pretty much emphasized during the Renaissance. And that's why it's not only a period in the history where excellency was in fine arts, and we could see before, or you will see later if you have the chance to have a look of the same movie. that is movie documentary. So basically the message is that crossing the boundaries is absolutely necessary to have the right picture of a place and to be able to work in a place. And being in Bangladesh was really interesting for me to understand many things that in the beginning were quite tough to understand. And the relations that anyway our two countries have. As it was said before, my country is a young country, and the language actually was a sort of Esperanto, a sort of a universal language in order to give the opportunity to the people spread within the Italian peninsula to be able to communicate. So this is it. Please don't think that we are just a society of literate people or just philosophers. I'm very proud to mention a name, which is Benedetto Croce and De Santis. The first one, a renowned philosopher, and the second one, an intellectual who turned into be a politician. So between the 18th and 19th century, they wanted to renovate the university method. And that was for the future scientists to have anyway a literate and philosophical background, and for the literate and future philosophers to have a minimum of a scientific background in order to have a better understanding of the individual fields. So the message is, let's cross the boundaries and feel free to approach the language. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefania Chiapello. Now I would ask Rafiqul Munir Chaudhary to say a few words to us.
Buongiorno. I would like to talk about, on this occasion, as the Italian Language Week is being celebrated here for the very first time in Bangladesh, thanks to the Honorable Ambassador of Italy, Senor Enrico. Okay, and I start saying my regards to all these people who are sitting over there in the stage, and so I'm going to talk about the importance of Italian language and culture from the point of view, from the students' point of view, why our students should or would learn Italian language. And I would talk from my own personal experiences or perspectives. Okay, so when I think of Italy, the language and the culture are interlinked, no? So when I think of Italy, actually I think of Italian cinemas. I grew up watching Italian movies, not in Italy, not in Europe, here in Bangladesh. I was a member of a particular film society, and so every other week we used to watch films by Federico Fellini, Michelangelo Antonioni, people like them. So that is the first thing I think of whenever I think of Italy and its language and its people. But also, when I had a chance to travel through Italy, I found out that Italy is a beautiful country. It's a beautiful country. We often say that Bangladesh is very green. Yeah, it is. But if you ever have the chance to travel through Italy, you'll see Italy is not less greener than Bangladesh. Okay, it's a beautiful country. Another thing is, it's a country of beautiful people. I mean, look-wise, okay? Like, giving example, like in the documentary, people who have seen the documentary, you have seen the reference of Botticelli. So two sculptures I would mention. One is Venus by Botticelli, another is David by Michelangelo. So they represent the human, you know, in terms of sculpture, in terms of art. So Italy, the language is also very melodious, as His Excellency uttered in his speech. The language is very melodious. I recall a small anecdote. When I was traveling through Italy for the very first time with my friend, I was living in London and he was living in USA. We were students. So we planned before and he came over and then we met in Paris. And then we traveled through train. And when we were coming back to Roma from Venice, in the train there was this food service. And since I am a teacher of Spanish and I knew Spanish, so I could, somehow communicate a little bit in Italian with people. So this lady in the train, in the compartment, came over and offered us some kind of juice. So this is how she was saying, would you like to have any juice? And my friend was saying, what is juice? And so it's like juice, but since she is an Italian speaker, she has this sonority and it's like, like that. So then my friend asked him, what kind of juice you have? And she was saying like orange juice, apple juice. So if you listen to Italian, you'll see like, the way they speak it, it has a sonorous, quality, the sound. You'll feel like you are listening to some kind of music, some kind of, music is going on, playing on. It's very beautiful. Even though I teach Spanish, my particular interest in Spanish language and recently with Portuguese language, but I still say I would say Italian sounds better, sweeter than all these other Romance languages. As you know, these are all Romance languages. Once you know Spanish, you can understand a little bit of Italian or Portuguese, a little bit of French. Okay, these are interlinked. Okay, because the father language, their mother language is Latin. From Latin, we got all these languages. So that is from a linguistic point of view. So one is, and then let me go back to this talking about the cinema. Okay, so when I was growing up watching all these films by Antonioni, Fellini, and when I think of all these people, beautiful people, actor and actresses, okay, Mastroianni, you can think of Monica Vitti, Claudio Cardinale, all these people, I don't know how many of you know them, okay, they come up to me when I think of Italy, the language and the culture, okay? And I don't know, maybe not many of you have seen these Italian, sort of art films, but you must have seen some Western films. You know Clint Eastwood? I'm particularly asking my students. Do you know Clint Eastwood? No? Okay. Clint Eastwood is a legendary Hollywood actor. Okay, he is old now. So he is famous for Western films. You have read many Western novels by Shiva Prakashoni. Now there are films which are known as Western films, one genre of films, and Clint Eastwood is famous for them. But when I think of all those Western films, there is one particular name I must mention, and he was Italian, and his name was Ennio Morricone. He is this great composer, Italian composer who composed all those Western films for those Western films, and these Western films were particularly known as, there comes the name of an Italian food, they are known as spaghetti Western. You know spaghetti? But these Westerns are known as spaghetti Western. I refer you two names, two films. One is Fistful of Dollars, okay? Another one is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So these are known as spaghetti Westerns. So these are all my, my reflection, my personal reflections of to do with Italian language and its culture. But going back from there, because I will talk about a little bit of the literature, the connection, okay? Now, Professor Shishir and Professor Ajam have already mentioned the name Michael Madhusudan Dotto. While I was studying at SOAS, I had a paper where I had to study Bengali literature, and then there was this Michael. We had to particularly study Michael Madhusudan Dotto. And then I came to know more about him and his works and everything. So Michael Madhusudan Dotto was hugely influenced by this Latinate world, by this, like this group of poets from English literature, like Byron particularly. And he knew several languages. And he lived, for a time, he lived in Versailles, near Paris, as you know. And when he was living in Versailles, he actually wrote a poem called the great poet Dante, and then he actually translated that poem, written in Bengali, into French, and then he sent it to the king of the then France, I forgot the name, okay, and Victor Emmanuel, that is the name of that king. So in that letter, Madhusudan is writing, sending that poem to that king, written on Dante. Sir, a poor rhymer who doesn't dare give himself the name of a poet, born on the shores of the Ganges, and a passionate admirer of the father of the Italian poetry, takes the liberty of presenting at the feet of your majesty, along with this letter, a Bengali sonnet, a little oriental flower, which he wishes to join to the garland to be wreathed in Italy for decorating the tomb of the illustrious Dante. So this is the letter, and then he finishes, of your majesty, the very humble servant Michael Madhusudan Dotto, and this was his address, 12 Rue des Chantiers, pardon my French, okay, Versailles, 5th May 1865. So it was, Dante was born on 1265, I guess, so it was written after 600 years, and the king really appreciated that poem. And let me, I would humbly ask the the senior ambassador and other two guests to allow me to read this poem that Michael wrote on Dante in Bengali. কবিগুরু দান্তে নিশান্তে সুবর্ণ কান্তি নক্ষত্র জ্যামতি তপনের অনুচর সুচারু কিরণে খেদায় তিমির পুঞ্জে হে কবি তেমতি প্রভা তব বিনাশীল মানস ভুবনে অজ্ঞান জনম তব পরম সুক্ষণে নব কবিকুল পিতা তুমি মহামতি ব্রহ্মাণ্ডের সুখণ্ডে তোমার সেবনে পরিহরি নিদ্রা পুনঃ জাগিলা ভারতী দেবীর প্রসাদে তুমি পশিলা সাহসে সে বিষম দ্বার দিয়া আধার নরকে যে বিষম দ্বার দিয়া ত্যাজি আশা পোষে পাপ প্রাণ তুমি সাধু পশিলা পুলকে যশের আকাশ হতে কভু কি হে খসে এ নক্ষত্র কোন কীট কাটে এ কোরকে. So this is the poem. So Madhusudan was, in my opinion, Madhusudan was the first modern man or poet from Bengal, and he actually, like following Petrarch's sonnet, he started writing Choturdoshpadi Kobita, and that gave a fresh, I would say, influence in the body of Bengali language at that point. I mean Bengali language and poetry movement, okay, as Professor Azam has already mentioned. So, and if we think of the cinema, Professor Shishi has already mentioned, like the neorealismo, the filmmakers like Vittorio De Sica and his most famous film like Bicycle Thieves. Satyajit Ray was highly influenced by that film, and actually it made him, or it was very helpful for him to think in his own way to make his classic film Pather Pachali. Okay, so these are all interlinked. So Italy and the language and the culture has always been with us from for a very, very long time. Okay, and when we talk about the humanism, okay, that started with this Renaissance, with all these people like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo. Okay, if you ever have the chance to visit Italy, please go to Roma and go to Vatican City, and you must see this magnificent work done by Michelangelo. Okay, this is like, as Professor Azam mentioned, that referring Jorge Luis Borges, the famous Argentine writer, that if you don't read Dante, then you haven't read anything. Okay, so if I would add to that, like, if you haven't seen that piece of work by The Creation of God, Man, by Michelangelo, you haven't seen many things. Okay, so these are the Italy and that Renaissance was a birthplace for this humanism. Like, before that, all the importance was on God, but from then on, no, human are more important. Studying through this, the importance on human values started getting on. So these are very important for us to understand the world and to know us, to know our surroundings. And when you talk about the drama, people, there could be many students who are interested in drama. You think of Pirandello, okay? So if you read some of the dramas, his dramas, you would understand why he's also very important, was important, still very influential. And outside there is this is very interesting, that this book exhibition, I would request our students to go and look at that particularly. You will see some of the original copies of books by Dante Alighieri, La Vita Nuova, with beautiful illustration. And also, I think there is this one, the first one, of Divine Comedy. One volume is there, but also there is at the corner towards the back, you'll see two copies, like two different books, written by one of my very favorite writer called Umberto Eco. Okay, he also is a theologian. Umberto Eco's two books are there in original Italian language. So, and if you haven't read The Name of the Rose, Il Nombre della Rosa, it's a novel set in the medieval time. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. One of our friends actually is translating that book into Bengali, but not from Italian. He doesn't know Italian. From like indirect translation through English. It is going to come out in next Boimela in February. And one of my all-time favorite films is like Cinema Paradiso. People who hasn't seen it, you must see it. I was little surprised that these one or two of those feature-length film was not selected for today's program, like Cinema Paradiso or La Vita è Bella, Life is Beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. You must watch it. So Human by Roberto Benigni. It won several Oscars. Okay, Giuseppe Tornatore, the great filmmaker who made this Cinema Paradiso, you will love it. If you have the time to watch it. And if you talk about the literature and writer, you can go on. Like Professor Azam mentioned, at that point of time, according to that history, and there are 1,000 names you could name from that Renaissance period. Even today, in the contemporary world, there are so many good writers, poets from Italy, and filmmakers also. And I personally, actually, I do translation a lot, but through English and some of the works from Spanish. I don't know Italian. But many years ago, there was this one particular book, a slim book called Il Seta, probably Il Seta, no? The silk in Italian, La Seta. La Seta. I translated that into Bengali. It is written by Alessandro Bariccio. Some 6 years ago, I translated it, and it was published here in Bangladesh. And why not talk about the music? I don't know how many of you know Andrea Bocelli. Do you know Andrea Bocelli? I often talk to my students in the class. I ask them several names, and they don't know nothing. Sorry, you should. Since you are studying languages and doing honors in, no matter you are studying French or Spanish or Chinese or Japanese, you should know the world so that your horizon will get spread, will be spread. So there's this, you go back home today whenever you have time, go to YouTube and write Andrea Bocelli, Boccelli. He's a blind man. He's a beautiful singer. And there is a song that is one of my favorites called Quizás, Quizás, Quizás. Okay? You'll fall in love with that song. Quizás in Spanish means perhaps, perhaps, perhaps. Okay? So, so all these things, and I will end my talk giving reference to a particular set of books. They are shown outside. They are published by this Francesco Mario Ricci, probably. I was surprised to see those books because it recalled me to two books that I have in my collection in my home, which are books by Jorge Luis Borges, one of my favorite authors of all time. And these particular books are actually published and illustrated by the same publisher. And I didn't know that it was Italian. And they have, produced some beautiful, wonderfully illustrious and beautiful books. If you go out there, you will see like the Francesco Maria Ricci, some of the books are there. Open the page, look at the pages, look at the illustration, look at the inlay form of the books. Like looking at books, it will help you, it will give you some ideas about the other world, the other language, and through this, the door, the horizon will open up for you. You'll be a better human being. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rafiqul Munir Chaudhry. Now it's time for Mr. Tor A. Torhaug. Torhaug, is it? To say a few words here. He is Norwegian, but he learned Italian. So what he says is also important for us.
For one thing, how important it is, I don't know, I can hardly think of two countries in this world more different than Norway and Bangladesh, where Bangladesh is crowded, small, green. Norway is large, cold, hardly populated, but it's also a beautiful country. I like Norway. But I have to say, apart from that, my case is probably not very typical as a student of Italian, but then again, whose life is really typical? Now, I spent my teenage years in a fishing village / Air Force base in the very north of Norway, which is Arctic. Even though Europe is quite a small continent as continents goes, the journey to Rome is something like 3,500 kilometers, so it's a sort of considerable distance. And I came there to Rome in the autumn of 1975. I was 18, I was with my family because my father had a temporary posting in Rome and he brought my mother and my elder brother and me. We lived in a quite nice apartment in a district called Monteverde, the Green Mountain. We knew little of the country beyond the fact that it was a land of wines and cheeses and complicated politics, organized crime, but we hoped that wouldn't be too much of a problem as we weren't in the south. One thing we also had these romantic notions about was how much of the social life was lived on the streets as some sort of improvised street theater. And whereas in cold Norway, of course, we tend to congregate in small rooms with rain and storms howling outside the window, and it's cold, and we wear very many clothes in order to be able to venture outside. Now, Italy was different. It was exotic, it was civilized, it was wonderful. It was also difficult to understand. Not because I couldn't find my way around. I loved walking and I had a good map. When I was too lazy to walk, or it was too far, the green buses of the public transport service ran everywhere I wanted to go, and tickets were cheap. There was art, there was beauty, there was ice cream. But I knew that if I wanted to actually understand anything about the place I was, the clue was to learn the language, Italian. So Italian is what I learned. I went to an intensive course at a small language school for adults, small group, energetic teacher, who insisted that we spoke up in class, and he gave us homework, which I diligently did. There was also a language laboratory, which is quite fun, a classroom where we students sat. This was 1975, so we had tape recorders with actual tapes and headsets, and we sort of listened to the Italian speaking proper Italian, and we recorded our imitations of it and had to spool back and sort of listen and compare. And it's actually quite a good method to get a good pronunciation. Now, as my case is a special case, the Italian language is also a very special case, actually. Because the language that we learned was the Italian that Italian school children learn when they start going to school. And that language, or we were told, is based on the language written, not spoken, but written by the great founders of Italian literature. Dante, of whom we have spoken, who died in 1321, Boccaccio, who has not been mentioned for some strange reason, who died in 1375, and Petrarca, who died in 1374. Now, strangely, it is a fact that these three authors, the last of whom died in 1375, which is actually 600 years before I was sort of stuttering myself into the Italian tape recorder, are actually very relevant. And this is strange, because when I try to read texts written in Norway in the 1300s, well, one thing, they're actually written in Iceland, but never mind, the same language, it's a totally different language. Whereas when I, having studied my Italian, I didn't know it too well at that time, read these authors, it's sort of recognizably the same language. You don't have to, I mean, you have to, it's difficult. You have to work at it. But it's still recognizably the same language. It has somewhat different, some sort of different forms. It has some different conventions of spelling and so on, but it's still the different language. It's still the same language. I won't pretend to be an expert of language history. Well, I'll pretend to be an expert of language history, but I'm not really. But I have to say a few words about the language history in the southwestern corner of Europe in the Middle Ages or before the Middle Ages. So basically we're talking about what is now present day, Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, parts of Belgium, parts of Switzerland, which were sort of in the Roman Empire and were during the sort of heyday of the Roman Empire between, the 1st century and the 5th century, were administered in Latin. Latin was the language of administration, and it was based probably on the language that people at one point spoke in Rome, but it was a language that you learned at school, that had its grammatical rules and had its vocabulary and had its uses. Both administration is one thing, but there's also the language of imaginative literature and philosophy and what have you. Now what happens in around the year 500 is that the political structures of the western part of this empire collapse. Of course, importantly, the Roman Catholic Church still stays. It has its over-national structures, territorially organized, and a system of churches, seminaries, not much actually when you get to what we call the Dark Middle Ages, but there is still a structure of this language which the learned learn and which is the educated. And what of course happens when you have a system that you have to learn a language is that it becomes very conservative. So the language of the church, if you will, as it became as we approached the year 1000, was changed little, whereas the illiterate masses around, their language changed a lot. And at some point around the year 1000, one starts writing in a different language which is based on sort of the spoken dialect. Of course, when I say France, Spain, Portugal, and Italy, it is very misleading because again, I won't pretend to be an expert, or I will, but the state structures of medieval Europe were complicated. There was lots of kingdoms and principalities and duchies and what have you, and there was a sort of empire that was nominally over some of the kingdoms, and there was a system of fealty and so on. But what happened is that you had a series of sort of places, courts, where people gathered round and they basically wrote poetry in their local languages. So the poets at the time, they worked at the courts of the emperors, kings, dukes, barons, and what have you, and they wrote this local language. To go back to the special case of Italian, and that is, there's a point to make, and that is that Italian was actually, whether it's due to the fact that Italian is actually quite close to Latin, or whether there were other sort of general conservative strains in Italian culture, I don't really know. But when you start writing in Italian around 1250, this language quite quickly gains, well, as I said, the three great crowns of the Italian literature all died in the 14th century, sort of 1321, 13th, and they sort of lived through the 13th century, and they quite soon gained an immense prestige. And of course what happened in Italy was that there, unlike in some of the other countries, there took a very long time to develop a central political power. And of course, as one likes to say, a language is a dialect with an army. And since there was, I'm not an expert of Italian history, since there was no central power, the Italian language was kept alive by the prestige of these authors. So you have the quite paradoxical situation that you have the humanist culture, which is very sort of centered on the classical texts, the Latin texts, the revival, as it were, of the classical Latin texts. And you have a parallel thing in Italy where there's another sort of humanist approach to the Italian literature, because the vast majority of Italians did not speak a language recognizable as Italian, and Italy was also quite late in introducing having a political unity and introducing universal education. I mean, basically, I have an Italian friend here in Dhaka, actually, whose father, born in the south of Italy in the 1920s, is illiterate, and that's sort of weird. And this only changed when we get after the Second World War, which is, you know, again, if to go back to me, which is the, and I'm really the sort of theme of this talk, that is something like, you know, it's sort of 30 years before I was sitting there learning Italian. So, there's a quite famous saying from 1861 after the unification of Italy, which was, well, it was a violent affair. Basically, the North Italian kingdom of the two Sardinias in Turin conquered the rest of Italy. I can say that I can put it that way because I'm not Italian. But anyway, the politician Massimo d'Azeglio said, "Fatta l'Italia, bisogna fare gli italiani." We have made Italy, now we have to make the Italians. And as I said, sort of the language was very much part of the identity, and the language which the newly unified Italian state, which came basically out of Turin in northern Italy, no one suggested that the dialect of Turin should be a basis for the Italian language. Quite the contrary. Massimo d'Azeglio's father-in-law, Alessandro Mazzoni, he had written a wonderful novel called The Betrothed, I Promessi Sposi, written originally in sort of Italian, but with a very sort of Milanese flavor. So what he did as part of the nation-building project in the 19th century Italy was he took his family, he had lots of money, so that wasn't a problem for him. He took his money, he moved to Florence, and at this point there were many more, how shall I put it, important places than Florence. And indeed, there probably there weren't very many Florentine authors who were that interesting, actually. But sort of the conceptuality is that the language written by Dante, Boccaccio, Petrarca, particularly Boccaccio and Petrarca. Dante is slightly different. I'll come back to that if I have time, which I don't. That this prestige sort of rubbed off onto the, what are we, 400 or 500 years later, it sort of rubbed off into the people of Florence and the modern language of Florence, and this is sort of how Manzoni revised his work linguistically in order to produce a modern Italian language, which was to become the vehicle of the modern Italian nationality. I mean, it still took another 100 years before it actually worked, the project, but it's interesting that it sort of did, that you take the language first, and then you produce the nationality by a conscious process through this language. Yeah. And of course, Italian, as I learned it in 1975 in Rome, was by then a language which was basically usable everywhere in Italy. So I can go anywhere. Now I can go anywhere in Italy, speak Italian, and it'll be okay. This was not the case 50 years before, necessarily. I actually sort of, my engagement with Italy and Italian at that time lasted about 9 months. I went on from Rome to study at the University for Foreigners in Perugia. And then I went home to Norway and did other things. I studied Russian, I went to library school, I got married, I started working. And frankly, I forgot a lot of what I had learned of the Italian language. But at a certain point, Italian took hold of me again. And it was again fortuitous, because at a certain point, we're now in 1988, I decided that I wanted to sort of do a master's degree in some sort of language or literatures, because I've always been a literature man. And I did have sort of preliminary knowledge of Russian and Italian, and I had to make a choice. And I was sort of thinking, now this was 1988, so it was still in the time of the Soviet Union, and I was thinking basically, oh God, the food. Will I want to go to the Soviet Union and eat Soviet food for lengthy periods of time? Will I want to go to Italy and eat Italian food for lengthy points of time? And will I want to drink red wine in Italy? Do I want to drink vodka in Russia? It was not actually, put in those terms, a difficult choice. So I went back. I took I went back to university. I took my exams in Italian language and literature, and I was caught up when I started to do my master's thesis in what I want to call the field of gravity emanated by this giant of probably the best poet, certainly in any European language, Dante. Because although it is the Divine Comedy is a totally, it has nothing to do with realism, except of course it does, but it has nothing to do with realism. It's a totally fictitious world, which on the surface of it, everything falls together. It's this beautiful concept of a world order where there is sin as absence, there is punishment, there is individuality of sin and of punishment. The wonderful thing that Borges also talks about of the beauty of the poetry, which in 2 or 3 lines, or sometimes even 10 or 15, can just capture the very essence of a person and keep it on for eternity, which is also part of the sort of fiction of the comedy, that the sins of the Inferno are punished in a way that sort of fixes the sin and the person who commits the sin in a very fitting way, so that the suffering of each soul is somehow perfectly fitted to the idea of a person eternally living his sin and regretting it, but with no possibility to change. So it's sort of the fascination of what happens time and time again in the comedy, this beautiful fixing of personalities in eternity. It's Inferno is the most readable of the cantos, it must be said. It's because the encounters are fairly brief and they're so very precise and beautiful. And of course it goes on to the sins that can be regretted, and where salvation will eventually take place after you've just sort of cleaned your soul, and you can go up to the heavens. And all this system where the pilgrim sort of goes through the realms of sin, of expiation, and of glory, until he finally reaches a point where Dante the poet stands at the bottom of all the eternal rows of the souls of all the saved souls of all humanity, who are shining in their sort of burning, wonderful light, and he takes his gaze up and up and up, first to Beatrice, his sort of beloved, and then to the Virgin Mary, and then finally up until he sees the face of God, and there is nothing else to see or understand. And he doesn't describe this feeling, the poem ends in this mystical vision, which somehow sums up the entire poem and the entire worldview of European Christianity, I think. Which is part of the point, but the great point, as Borges says in an essay, is that the reason to read Dante is the sheer pleasure of his ability to describe these wonderful, eternal things. Yeah, I got carried away there, but thank you.
Thank you. Tor reminds me of my American professors with the style of talking and gestures. This is how a professor in MIT should talk. So now the floor is open for some questions. So if you have some questions, then ask the question.
Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to say, is there Italian people who talk about the Quran? I mean, Quranic club or community in Italy? Because I have seen participants in Cairo in Quran competition who was Italian. So I mean, a Quran community in Italy.
Well, I think that in Italy there are 140,000 Bengalis other than other Muslims. So there should be some community, as you are talking about.
Who live with Quran and...
Yeah, maybe. I think Romans are the only people in the world who gave passports to the colonized people. Only people in the world. And Italy is still giving passports to the immigrants. So there's the only speciality of the Roman Empire. In the Roman Empire gave passport to the colonized people. And they are doing the same thing. So there are 140,000 Bengalis, other communities. So there should be something like that. Yes.
I don't know how many students are studying Italian at Institute of Modern Language, and I would like to know what is the main reason why you are studying Italian, and what do you think about also the intervention that have been very with a big inspiration for all of you, for the level of, let's say, of the reference to the Italian culture, to the Italian history. They give a lot of reason how and why to have an in-depth approach to the Italian language and to the Italian culture. May I know also from you, from students of Italian language, what is the main reason and main objective for you to study Italian? Thank you.
Buongiorno. আমি ইটালিয়ান ভাষা শিখেছি ছোটবেলা থেকে আমি ইটালিয়ান মানে আমি একজন ক্রিশ্চিয়ান
Oh, he's a Christian. From the childhood, he is interested in Italian.
আমি ছোটবেলা থেকে ইটালিয়ান ফাদারদের সাথে মানে ওনাদের সাথেই চলাফেরা
So he passed his time with Italian fathers.
Javarian fathers, yeah. Maybe you know. And I love Italy. I like Italy and I like pasta.
Buongiorno. My question is, we are learning Italian language here, and what else can we learn? Are there any scopes of learning in Italian language furthermore, or can we learn some other subjects in Italy? I would like to ask if there is any sort of scope of getting scholarship there in Italy. Is there any scholarship for Bangladeshi students? What are the scopes?
So I invite you to visit this website on the Italian language, because there you can find all this kind of information. Where to study Italian in Italy, where to study Italian abroad, including Bangladesh. If there are not information on Bangladesh, we can of course provide for that. For scholarships, of course, you can also approach the Italian embassy, and we will give all the possible information. There are not only scholarships for studying Italian, but also for studying other subjects in Italian, but also in English in Italy. Then there are some European programs, like Erasmus Plus, for instance, and I had the pleasure also to meet the group of Bangladeshi students that left this year also to Italy, and not only to Italy, of course, but also continue in other European countries in different subjects, from mathematics to architecture, economics, and they have the opportunity to have a scholarship and to finish their study in Europe 1 or 2 years of specialization. So there is plenty of opportunity. So I invite you to contact the embassy, and we will provide all information according to your profile and what you really would like to know, in which subjects, what is your aim of specialization, for instance. Okay?
Grazie.
Prego.
Recently, I have completed Italian Junior Certificate course, which is equivalent to A1 level from IML, University of Dhaka. Recently, I have visited China in an exchange program. Does Italian Embassy Dhaka arranges those type of summer camps or exchange programs in a short-term basis?
Promote any of these initiatives, but if there is, any interest from your side, of course, there is a possibility on these exchange programs, and we will try to also to frame in the existing agreement that we have between Italy and Bangladesh.
Buongiorno, io parlo in italiano. Io, my famiglia sta di là, my famiglia sta di là, anche io imparare italiano, anche mi piace viaggiare differenti paesi perché io imparare l'italiano.
Grazie mille. This is one of the reasons, actually, because there is, as the Professor Shishir was mentioning before, in Italy live 140,000 Bangladeshi, very well integrated. They are with economic activities, and of course, they call their families also to Italy. We issue a lot of visas for family reunion. We just issued this year more than 8,000 visas for family reunion. So it is better to learn Italian before going to Italy for wives and children that reach their parents in Italy. But not only for this, because many are the Bangladeshi that come back to Bangladesh, and maybe they started by learning in Italian schools, but then they do not want to lose their level of Italian. So having courses at university level or at school level, it is very important, because maybe they want to keep this skill that can use also not only to go back to Italy periodically. Sometimes they have also get the citizenship, so they are Italian citizen. The Italian community in Bangladesh is made of registered or more than 600 people. The large majority are Bangladeshi with Italian passport. So you can see, and of course, having the opportunity to have courses of Italian language at university is extremely important for them. And I think that they can maximize the skill that already they obtain in Italy by studying at school. So your aim to study Italian is very common, and should be this one of the main reasons to study in Italy, to maintain the link with the families in Italy.
Anche io 2 volte andato Italia, Milano, 2 volte. Adesso studio qua.
Very good.
Ciao, That's the word I learned from one of my Italian neighbors when I was studying back in Beijing. But now I just saw that our students are using a different term to greet, like bonjour. Bonjour, okay. So my question, like my first question is to the Honorable Ambassador is like, Italian cuisine is my second most favorite cuisine in the world. The first one is definitely Bengali cuisine. So all we know is like pizza, pasta, and spaghetti. Do you have any recommendation like about any other dishes that we should try that is like really good?
So the Italian cuisine is very rich and actually is the reflection also of different cultures that is make the Italian culture. So Italy is from the south, that is very close to the South Mediterranean countries that are also Arabic countries. So our cuisine is also influences of from Arabic countries, but it's very close also to the Central Europe and to the north of Europe. So in these striper land, there is a lot and a very rich cuisine. At the end of the November, we organize a week of the Italian taste. There will be many activities. Also, will be advertised through TV. So I will all invite you to follow these activities in order to have much more information on the Italian cuisine, and of course we will promote in different restaurants that already serve Italian dishes.